The air is thick with tension as Rachel Green steps out of the rideshare, her duffel bag heavy with memories and unspoken words. The scent of damp leaves fills her lungs, a stark reminder of the home she left behind. Why did everything change? The security gate looms before her, a barrier not just of metal, but of years lost. As she presses the entry system, her voice trembles, a fragile thread connecting her to the sibling who now sees her as a stranger. The chilling response from Megan Hayes echoes in the silence, a painful reminder of the rift that has grown between them. Can family ties withstand the weight of resentment? Rachel stands at the edge of the gate, heart racing. The late September air clings to her skin, cool and thick. She waits for the click of the lock, the sound of welcome. None comes. The gate remains shut. She tries again, her voice cracking. "Megan, it's me." The main entrance opens, revealing Megan in a tailored blazer, every inch the estate's gatekeeper. "I'm calling the police," she says, eyes narrowing as if Rachel were a stranger. "There's someone trying to enter the property. Claims to be family." The shock punches the air from Rachel's lungs. "Megan, what are you doing? This isn't your home anymore." "You've been gone for decades, Rachel. Don't show up here dressed like that, expecting something." Rachel tightens her grip on the duffel bag. "I just got discharged. I thought I'd see Mom, maybe Dad." Megan scoffs. "You should have thought of them before disappearing for 25 years. You're not in the will. You're not even on the deed." The words hit harder than any combat report Rachel ever filed. "I grew up in this house," she says, voice low. "That tree." She points to the sycamore scraping against the attic window. "I broke my arm climbing it. I bled into the carpet you probably replaced." Megan's jaw clenches. "You always made everything about you. You think a military gear earns you the right to just show up and expect a hero's welcome?" The police cruiser turns onto the street with agonizing slowness, blue lights flashing but siren off. Rachel's gut twists as two officers step out, the weight of the moment crashing down. Will they bridge the gap, or will the past keep them apart? The scent of fresh paint and sawdust filled the air, a bittersweet reminder of weekends spent renovating the old house with her father. Rachel Green's heart raced as laughter echoed in her mind, memories of family gatherings wrapping around her like a warm blanket. But now, standing outside, those memories felt like ghosts, haunting her with the weight of absence. The chill of the autumn breeze contrasted sharply with the warmth of those moments, deepening her sense of loss and longing for a place she once called home. As she stood at the security gate, a barrier not just of metal but of years lost, Rachel pressed the entry system. Her voice trembled, a fragile thread connecting her to the sibling who now saw her as a stranger. The chilling response from Megan Hayes echoed in the silence, a painful reminder of the rift that had grown between them. Can family ties withstand the weight of resentment? Rachel's heart raced as she waited for the click of the lock, the sound of welcome. None came. "Megan, it's me," she pleaded, her voice cracking. The main entrance opened, revealing Megan in a tailored blazer, every inch the estate's gatekeeper. "I'm calling the police," she said, eyes narrowing as if Rachel were a threat. "There's someone trying to enter the property. Claims to be family." The shock punched the air from Rachel's lungs. "Megan, what are you doing? This isn't your home anymore. You've been gone for decades, Rachel. Don't show up here dressed like that, expecting something." Rachel tightened her grip on the duffel bag. "I just got discharged. I thought I'd see Mom. Maybe Dad." Megan scoffed. "You should have thought of them before disappearing for 25 years. You're not in the will. You're not even on the deed." The words hit harder than any combat report Rachel ever filed. "I grew up in this house," she said, voice low. "That tree." She pointed to the sycamore scraping against the attic window. "I broke my arm climbing it. I bled into the carpet you probably replaced." Megan's jaw clenched. "You always made everything about you. You think a military gear earns you the right to just show up and expect a hero's welcome? The police cruiser turned onto the street with agonizing slowness, blue lights flashing but siren off. Rachel's gut twisted as two officers stepped out, the weight of the moment crashing down. Would they bridge the gap, or would the past keep them apart? One officer, barely out of the academy, froze slightly when he saw her. "Rachel Green Hale?" he asked. "Ma'am, you just got out, Pentagon certified, Lieutenant Colonel Cyber Command." Rachel swallowed hard. "This is my parents' house." The young officer glanced at Megan, who folded her arms triumphantly. "This property belongs to Megan Hayes Bennett and Richard Hale. There's no legal record of Rachel Green Hale holding ownership or rights of residence." Rachel's mouth opened and closed. "Wait, Richard Hale, my father." She blinked hard. "He's still here." Megan's face remained carved from stone. "He moved in after selling the house we grew up in. This was Grandpa's. I renovated it legally." "I don't care about legal," Rachel whispered. "I care that it was home." The officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, unless you have identification proving this is your residence, we're going to have to ask you to leave the premises." Her hands trembled as she fumbled for her discharge papers, but even she knew they didn't matter here. She took a step back, then another, until her boots met the edge of the sidewalk. She didn't cry when they took her medals. She didn't cry when she coded in a hospital tent in Bahrain, but she cried now because a place that shaped her refused to recognize her. Her phone buzzed. Numb fingers grabbed it. A message from Mom. No name, just, "You should return to base. There's nothing here for you." She let the phone drop. Through the fog of her tears, she looked up past the window where a figure sat in the living room. Her father. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't even glance at her. She looked through the window, a silhouette of her father seated inside, unseeing, refusing to acknowledge her. That night, she slept in her car, staring at the dark outline of the home that should have been hers. By morning, a for sale sign was already posted on the lawn. She didn't sleep much. Her eyes refused to close. Every creak of the wind, every flicker of the porch light, every memory clinging to the silhouette of that house kept me frozen in place. My heart raced with a rhythm I hadn't felt since my early deployments. This was supposed to be my sanctuary, my inheritance, my anchor. Now, it felt like a battleground. The next morning, I pulled into a small cafe, bleary-eyed and bone-tired. Ruth Clean was already there, dressed in pressed slacks and a dark blazer, a sharp contrast to my faded military gear and the exhaustion etched into my face. We hadn't seen each other since undergrad, but she looked at me like no time had passed. That alone almost made me cry. "I saw the listing this morning," she said, flipping her tablet toward me. There it was, my home, listed under Raven Holdings LLC. I stared at the screen, disbelief washing over me. "Raven Holdings?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded grimly. "And here's the kicker," she continued, passing over a printout. 3 months ago, there was a property transfer recorded. My name was on the seller line, except that wasn't my signature. "That's forged," I said flatly, a cold pressure building behind my eyes. "I've never signed anything related to selling that house." Ruth pulled up another document, this one from a local notary. Witnessed and stamped by a guy who was under review last year for falsifying DMV affidavits. "I'll subpoena him," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "So they sold their house and now they're laundering through mine?" Her brows arched. "What?" I took a breath, steadying myself. 3 months ago, they moved out of their house. Megan Hayes said it was time for a fresh start. They showed up here, claiming it made more sense to consolidate family assets. My parents, especially my mom, made a big deal about how sentimental the old house was. But I didn't think they meant this house. Ruth nodded slowly. They probably used Raven Holdings as a buffer to avoid legal exposure. Whoever's behind that company, I bet your sibling's husband is involved. My stomach turned at the thought. Brian! The tension hung thick in the air, a storm brewing just beneath the surface. I could feel the weight of my past pressing down on me, the memories of laughter and love now twisted into a fight for my identity. Would I reclaim what was rightfully mine, or would the shadows of resentment keep me from finding my way home? As I left the cafe, the scent of rain lingered in the air, mingling with the rustle of leaves. Each step felt heavier, the world around me blurring into a haze of uncertainty. I was determined to confront my sibling, to unravel the tangled web of betrayal and reclaim my place in the family. But would she see me as the sibling she once knew, or as a threat to her carefully constructed life? The stakes were high, and the battle for acceptance and belonging had only just begun. The air was thick with tension, a storm brewing just beneath the surface. Rachel Green felt the weight of her past pressing down on her, memories of laughter and love twisted into a fight for her identity. She had returned to Philadelphia, hoping to reconnect with her family, but instead she found herself entangled in a web of betrayal. "Your sibling's husband is involved," Ruth said, her voice steady but laced with concern. Rachel Green's stomach churned at the thought of Brian. The stakes were high. Would she reclaim what was rightfully hers, or would the shadows of resentment keep her from finding her way home? As she left the cafe, the scent of rain lingered in the air, mingling with the rustle of leaves. Each step felt heavier, the world around her blurring into a haze of uncertainty. She was determined to confront her sibling, Megan Hayes, to unravel the tangled web of deceit. But would Megan see her as the sibling she once knew, or as a threat to her carefully constructed life? Just then, her phone buzzed. An email from her mother flashed on the screen. "Rachel Green, this is not betrayal, it's practicality. You never lived here. We did, and you're never around. Love, Mom." The words hit harder than she expected, like a cold slap of indifference. "I need access to that house," Rachel Green murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just to take it back. I want to know what's inside." Ruth hesitated, concern etched on her face. "That could be dangerous, Rachel Green. If they're using the house for something illegal, I'm not walking away." The rest of the day passed in a blur of intense calls and quiet meetings. As night fell, Rachel Green parked down the block, determined to keep watch. The air was still warm, sticky, as if Virginia hadn't accepted fall yet. Then she noticed him, a man standing across the street, lingering near the corner lamp post. When he left, she thought nothing of it until she found a slip of paper wedged under her windshield wiper. It wasn't folded, just pressed flat like a warning. "If you're the real Rachel Green, meet me at Alley 7, 11 p.m. Come alone." Her heart raced. She had 10 minutes. Would she dare to go? The shadows hugged the walls, twisting like the memories she stirred up. Just when she thought she was uncovering family secrets, a wave of realization crashed down. The truth wasn't just hidden in documents or beneath floorboards. It lay in the unguarded look Megan gave her, revealing years of hurt and longing. It was almost palpable, like the sharpness of cold steel beneath her fingers. Sometimes the biggest battles are fought in silence. Would she find acceptance, or would the echoes of the past drown her out? The battle for belonging had only just begun. The neighbor whispered, his voice urgent but cautious. "I've seen how your sibling's husband brings men here at night." The air was thick with tension, clinging like the humidity after a rainstorm. Standing under the flickering street lamp at the alley's edge, I tried to make sense of Ethan. A weathered face, ex-Marine turned mechanic, mid-40s. His eyes spoke of unease, and his tone was sharp. "They say you're dangerous, Rachel Green," he said slowly. "But what's happening in that building? That's the real danger." My fingers brushed the edge of my jacket, where a small recording device rested, pulse quickening as I scanned the shadows. No security cameras. Silence hung like a heavy curtain. "What do you mean?" I pressed, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Men unloading crates from black vans, and the license plates. They vanish before they even pull up. Your sibling's husband is there every week, always in gloves, never a word to anyone. A vivid memory crashed over me, Brian's contemptuous tone ringing in my mind from the day of my grandfather's funeral. "You should stick to places with guns, Lieutenant. This isn't your terrain anymore." Maybe he was right. I wasn't home anymore, but I knew how to watch, how to wait. Later that night, cloaked in black, I slipped back to the alley. Heart pounding, camera clipped to my collar, I crouched behind a half-burnt fence. Midnight settled in, accompanied by the muted growl of engines. 2 black trucks glided in, headlights off. I held my breath, I edged closer, nerves firing in a whirlwind of tension as loose gravel crunched underfoot. My heart hammered in rhythm with each step. I positioned the small audio recorder near a cracked vent, its mic angled toward the loading area just beyond. Inside, muffled voices filtered through, indistinguishable, until one sliced through the noise. "If that officer girl finds out, sever the tie. No warning." Time froze. The voice was unmistakable, my father's. A tight knot formed in my throat. That deep Virginia drawl echoed fiercely in my mind. After years of silence, I was eavesdropping on a conversation about my own erasure. Slowly, I retreated behind the fence, hands trembling, squeezing the recording device as if it might slip away. Back in my car, I replayed the audio, scrubbing through nebulous voices until his clear command rippled through the chaos. "Sever the tie." It haunted me, looping like a broken record. Sleep eluded me, shadows lingering in the corners of my mind. As dawn broke, I circled back to the alley. Anticipation clawed at my chest as I arrived at the vent, but horror washed over me. The recorder was gone. Someone had been here, and they knew. Panic surged through me, sharp and metallic. I had to act before the window slammed shut. I dashed to a nearby diner, my heart pounding like the rising sun. Just as I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed, jolting me. An unknown number. My heart sank as the message lit up the screen. "You're playing with fire. I have your military psych report. Want to see what it says about you?" The ground beneath me shifted. My fate felt teetering, like a candle in a windstorm. Just then, my father pulled into the lot. Navy blue sedan, crisp jacket zipped tight, hat pulled low. He didn't hug me, didn't even meet my gaze. "You've changed, and not for the better," he spat, the words hitting me like cold rain. The wind picked up, swirling around us, but it wasn't the weather that chilled him. It was me, his own flesh and blood. I caught the distance in his eyes, the rigidity in his stance. How did it come to this? Could I still find my way back to acceptance, or would the shadows of our past swallow me whole? He'd mapped this meeting out like a cold business deal. 2 steps away, I paused, my heart racing. "Why are you doing this?" He stood stone-faced. "You came back different." The words sliced through me. I devoted 25 years to this country, and in that time, he'd transformed into a stranger. All I wanted was a nod of pride, but indifference pulsed in the air. "I need the truth about the house." My voice was tight, controlled. "You knew what Grandpa left me. You watched the signing." He shifted, unease knitting his brow. "That document." "Outdated. Situations change enough to erase my name, to bury it beneath a shell company." I stepped in, close enough to sense his discomfort. "I have audio." His jaw clenched. "I heard you. You said if I found out, you'd cut the tie." He turned slowly, eyes colder than the night outside. "I meant it. We've shielded the family name from you. Your return endangers everything. Your sibling, she's part of something respected. You're living in your car because you sold my home." Silence draped over us. He shot a glance at the black SUV parked nearby. "I won't apologize for my choices, but deep down, I knew. You're ashamed of me. That's the root of this. He recoiled, adjusting his cuffs, a gesture of dismissal. You're not one of us anymore. Those words hit hard. They didn't just sting. They burrowed in. He turned, striding toward the SUV, where a familiar chauffeur stood waiting. A man who had lifted my boxes and never spoke a word. They drove away without another glance, leaving me marooned in the soaking rain. It began as a light drizzle, but soon it pierced through my sleeves, my collar, my very soul. As the rain blurred everything around me, it struck me. This wasn't a story about reconciliation, but a stark revelation. Across our fractured past, a family photo hung on the wall, laughter untouched by time. It caught Megan Hayes' eye, and in that moment, her defenses crumbled. It wasn't just about the house or control. It was the fear of losing the only connection to her past. Behind her assertive facade lay vulnerability, pulling Rachel back into a history they both longed to remember. With the air thick with unresolved emotions, both sisters faced the truth. Could they navigate their way back to acceptance, or would the shadows of what was lost consume them both? The rain-soaked asphalt outside my car smelled like memories, mingling with the faint scent of gasoline. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was back at my grandfather's house. Laughter echoed through the halls, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. I could almost hear his deep voice, sharing stories of resilience and hope. The taste of sweet lemonade lingered on my tongue, a reminder of those simpler days. But now, that warmth felt like a distant dream, overshadowed by the cold reality of my absence and the growing chasm between me and my sibling, Megan. As I sat there, my heart raced. I had to confront the truth about the house. My voice trembled with tension. You knew what Grandpa left me. You watched the signing. The unease on the chauffeur's face was palpable. That document. Outdated. Situations change enough to erase my name. I stepped closer, feeling the weight of his discomfort. I have audio. You said if I found out, you'd cut the tie. His eyes turned icy, colder than the night outside. I meant it. We've shielded the family name from you. Your return endangers everything. Megan was part of something respected, while I was living in my car because I sold my home. Silence hung heavy between us. He glanced at the black SUV parked nearby, a reminder of the life I had lost. I won't apologize for my choices, I said, but deep down I knew the truth. You're ashamed of me. That's the root of this. His dismissive gesture cut deeper than any words. You're not one of us anymore. Those words burrowed into my heart, leaving me feeling marooned in the pouring rain. As the rain blurred my surroundings, I realized this wasn't just about reconciliation. It was a stark revelation. A family photo hung on the wall, laughter frozen in time. It caught Megan's eye, and in that moment, her defenses crumbled. This wasn't just about the house or control. It was the fear of losing the only connection to her past. Behind her assertive facade lay vulnerability, pulling me back into a history we both longed to remember. With the air thick with unresolved emotions, we faced the truth. Could we navigate our way back to acceptance, or would the shadows of what was lost consume us both? And then, as I sat in my car, chest tight and throat burning, I found an envelope wedged beneath my windshield wiper. It wasn't official, just a plain manila sleeve sealed with tape. I got in, turned on the cabin light, and opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photocopy of my grandfather's original will. My name, the property address, all unaltered. The signature dates matched the copy I had stored in an encrypted archive. No transfer clause, no sale condition. It was airtight. A handwritten note was stapled to the top. I notarized this document that day. I know they falsified it later. My heart raced. Proof. The first crack in their narrative. I scanned it again, then snapped a picture and texted it to Ruth with a single line. This changes everything. The deed was forged, but Brian's name appeared in an old FBI case sealed until now. I sat in the corner of my temporary rental, a bare mattress and one chair, lit only by the blue light of my laptop. Outside, the night wind rattled loose siding. Inside, my stomach churned as I stared at the report Isaac had just sent over. I had reached out hours earlier, forwarding the original deed and the scanned will along with the corporate trail Ruth had begun unearthing. He responded almost instantly. "I remember Raven Holdings," he wrote. "We flagged them as a front company during a 2012 counter-intel probe, laundering false contracting dark money, but we were told to stand down. The case was sealed." Now, the name Brian Keene was staring back at me, listed under consultant logistics in the appendix of that same file. I froze. Megan had always insisted Brian saved the family from collapse. He rebuilt Dad's business. But at what cost? The air crackled with tension as Rachel Green scanned the screen, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Shadows danced in the dim light of the room, echoing the turmoil within her. Heart racing, she felt the weight of betrayal looming over her. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown. A chill swept through her as she realized that everything she thought she understood about her family was unraveling. Could she truly confront Megan Hayes with this explosive truth, or would it seal their fates forever? Without him, they would have lost everything. No wonder Megan protected Brian so fiercely. But rebuild with what? Dirty money. Rachel opened the next PDF from Ruth, revealing transaction records tied to shell companies leasing the warehouse. Ruth had traced them to 3 entities, each registered in Nevada under different names, but the money flowed to one destination, Megan's private account, over $500,000 transferred in the past 18 months. Rachel clenched her jaw and pulled up the leasing contract. She didn't need to read past the first line. Her father's signature, bold and slanted, was right there. Land Use Supervisor. He had signed off on it, so they were all in it. All 3 of them. Rachel ran a background index on Raven Holdings through the private intel portal Isaac still had access to. The tags were damning. Classified contractor cover, suspected financial funnel, domestic asset misappropriation. Isaac pinged again. "You sure you're ready for this? If you move, they'll hit back." She replied without hesitation. "I'm not backing off. I'm not just fighting for a house. I'm fighting to expose what they've done and who they're still hurting." She called Ruth. "I have the contractor names, the bank routing, the signed lease, everything links, and the forgery matches. My signature was copied from a tax return in 2017, notarized by a woman who hasn't been licensed since 2020. I already verified." Ruth was silent for a moment. "Then we file fraud, criminal conspiracy, real estate title tampering, possibly federal racketeering if the Raven Holdings connection holds." It holds. For the first time since her return, Rachel felt grounded. Not angry, not broken, focused. "They erased me," she said, "but now I found them on paper in crime files, in signatures they forgot to hide." Her inbox chimed. A leak. Subject, urgent. She's investigating. It was an internal email sent between 2 Raven Holdings addresses. Someone had forwarded it anonymously. The storm was brewing, and Rachel knew she was on the brink of a revelation that could change everything. Would she have the courage to face Megan and unveil the truth? Or would the shadows of their past consume them both? Rachel Green stood at the threshold of her past, the air thick with unspoken words and unresolved tension. She had pieced together the puzzle, each fragment revealing a deeper betrayal. The clock was ticking. Clean house before the 16th. The Hale girls were relentless, and she could feel their presence lurking in the shadows. An internal email had leaked, a whisper of the chaos brewing beneath the surface. As she approached the security gate, clad in her military gear, she felt the weight of her family's legacy pressing down on her. Beside her stood Ruth, her lawyer, a fierce ally ready to battle the forces that sought to erase their history. Sunlight streamed through the high windows of Fairfax Town Hall, illuminating the tension that crackled between them and the property community center clerk. The clerk's fingers danced over the keyboard, her eyes darting nervously. "This deed is active," she said, her tone almost dismissive. Ruth remained unyielding. "That's exactly why we're here. We're filing a petition for an immediate injunction on all transfers due to compelling evidence of forgery and fraud." Rachel stepped forward, her heart racing as she slid the meticulously prepared folder across the counter. Inside lay the damning evidence: signature inconsistencies, a timeline of deceit, and the original deed from her grandfather's will. The clerk's expression shifted from indifference to shock as she processed the weight of Rachel's words. "Lieutenant Colonel Hale," Rachel said softly, her voice steady, "retired. I grew up in that house." By noon, they had secured a temporary hold on all transactions related to the property. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental, a line drawn in the sand. The drive to the house was surreal. This time, they didn't park across the street or hide in the shadows. They pulled straight into the driveway where Megan Hayes's Lexus and Brian's truck awaited, symbols of the family she was determined to confront. Ruth adjusted her jacket, pulling out the official envelope containing the injunction. "Let's give it to her together," she said, her voice firm. Rachel rang the bell, her heart pounding as Megan Hayes opened the door. The polished smile on Megan Hayes's lips faltered, replaced by a flicker of recognition and something deeper. "Fear?" "Rachel," Megan Hayes said, her voice a mix of surprise and guardedness. The air between them crackled with unresolved conflict. Would Rachel find the acceptance she craved, or would the shadows of their past consume them both? The moment hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Rachel Green stood in the dimly lit hallway of her childhood home, surrounded by shadows that whispered of the past. The scent of aged wood mingled with the faint smell of rain, stirring memories of laughter and long-buried arguments. Each echo felt like a ghost, a playful reminder of family dinners, game nights, the comfort of her mother's embrace that once shielded her from the world. Now, that warmth faded, overshadowed by an unnerving silence. Would she ever find her way back to the acceptance she hungered for? Or was this home nothing but a memory drifting out of reach? Then she saw Ruth, the color drained from her face. "We're here to serve you with a court injunction," Ruth said crisply, handing over the envelope. "Effective immediately, any transfer, lease, or modification of the property is suspended." Megan Hayes's hands trembled as she snatched the papers. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" she hissed. Brian appeared behind her, slow and deliberate. "You really want to go this route, Rachel?" he spat, his voice like gravel soaked in oil. I met his gaze, calm, controlled. "I used to work internal investigations at the Pentagon." I felt my heart quicken. "I've seen men like you. Watch them bluff, threaten, then fold." His eyes narrowed, wariness flickered, but Megan Hayes sputtered, "You can't do this. You're not even the rightful owner." Ruth cut in, "That's what we intend to prove in court." Brian stepped forward, body rigid. "This is harassment. You're harassing my family." Ruth stared him down, unyielding. "And fraud is a felony." We turned, leaving them in a stunned silence. The slam of the door echoed behind us, a resounding final act in a play that had dragged on too long. In the car, Ruth looked at me, tension thick in the air. "They'll hit back, Rachel. You ready?" What they didn't know, I had access to tools they couldn't fathom: digital forensics, chain of custody, metadata, and a few friends who owed me favors. The soft hum of my laptop filled the silent apartment as I leaned closer to the glow of my second monitor, tracing digital breadcrumbs left by those who thought they were above the system. Stacks of documents cluttered my kitchen counter, overlapping in an organized chaos only I could decipher. The clock ticked toward midnight. I hadn't slept in days, but I couldn't afford to rest now. I clicked into the secure Zoom room. Isaac appeared. Would this confrontation unlock the acceptance I craved? Or would the burdens of the past suffocate any chance of belonging? Only time would tell. Rachel Green stood in the warm, inviting glow of the kitchen. The mouth-watering scent of her mother's classic recipes twisted through the air, memories flooding back. Just as she began to relax, she caught a whisper of hushed conversation outside. It was her sibling, Megan Hayes, but who was the mystery voice sharing secrets in the shadows? Heart-pounding, Rachel stepped closer to the window. As she peered out, her world tilted. There stood their estranged father, back after years gone. Rachel felt a wave of disbelief wash over her. Megan had kept this hidden? The revelation cracked open old wounds, reshaping everything she thought she knew about family. Rachel felt a storm of emotions swirl within her, conflicted feelings of anger, sadness, and a desperate need to belong. Memories tugged at her heart, laughter-filled holidays, quiet dinners, the warmth of family. All of it threatened to drown her. What held Megan back? Protecting the family legacy? Or was it fear? The tension vibrated in the air, thick enough to cut. How could Rachel possibly bridge the gap now? She remembered the rain scent, the rustle of leaves in the wind, moments that once felt like home, now distorted by secrets. With her breath held, Rachel stepped outside, the warmth of the kitchen fading behind her. The confrontation loomed ahead. Would this moment lead to reconciliation or deeper conflict? Only time would reveal if Rachel could reshape her sense of belonging or if the wounds would run too deep. A world of uncertainty lay ahead, filled with potential for heartbreak or healing. Would the truth ultimately unite them or leave them even more fractured? In a dim kitchen, shadows danced as the clock ticked ominously toward midnight. The air was thick with tension. Rachel Green's heart raced with anticipation and dread. She needed answers. Would the truth she had waited for bring her acceptance or heartbreak? A message flashed on her screen. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. Suddenly, Kayla's voice cut through the tension. Rachel Green, your inbox was accessed at 8:42 p.m. from an unfamiliar device. Rachel's breath stopped. Are you telling me I've been hacked? Someone's on to you. They're covering their tracks, Kayla warned with a worried glance. The clock continued its relentless march. It's worse than I thought, Rachel whispered, feeling the weight of secrets pressing down on her. A letter sat on her kitchen table. It felt insignificant, yet heavy. The words scrawled on the plain envelope sent shivers down her spine. A cease and desist from Raven Holdings Legal Affairs. But Rachel had already sent in her report to the community center of the Inspector General. It wasn't just paper. It was her truth, a lifeline thrown into a storm. Inside that envelope were damning documents, bank transfers, falsified deeds, all meticulously bound. One thing they didn't expect? A soldier trained to uncover the truth. The air crackled with impending change. Later that evening, an automated reply pinged. Your report has been received. Reading it 3 times, a wave of relief flooded her. Not whispers in the dark anymore. This was a declaration. She wouldn't let family secrets suffocate her any longer. As Rachel prepared for the confrontation ahead, she could almost feel the cool rain scent wafting in, a stark contrast to the fires brewing within. Would she shatter old chains or forge a new path? Only time would tell as she braced herself for the storm of revelations waiting just outside her door. What would the truth uncover? And could it bring her and Megan back together, or push them further apart? In the end, who would emerge as the real victor in this battle for family and legacy? The summer sun cast a golden hue over a family picnic from years past. Rachel Green stood there, the air thick with the scent of BBQ and fresh-cut grass. Laughter echoed around her as cousins chased each other, their joy infectious. But then she spotted Megan Hayes, younger and carefree, her laughter ringing like music. In that moment, everything felt perfect. until the weight of family secrets began to fill the air. A gust of wind swept through, carrying the scent of impending rain. A chill ran down Rachel's spine. Could family truly be both home and prison? As she grappled with her unresolved longing to belong, the memories blurred. The tension between them had always been there, simmering just beneath the surface. Rachel had returned after years away, hoping to reconnect, to find a sense of home. But Megan, assertive and guarded, was determined to protect what she felt was rightfully hers. Their past grievances loomed large, casting shadows over any chance of reconciliation. Rachel's heart raced as she recalled the moment she decided to confront the truth. She had uncovered a web of deceit, a family legacy tainted by betrayal. The stakes were high, and the air crackled with tension. Would revealing the truth bring them closer, or would it drive them further apart? That night, as rain began to fall, Rachel sat alone in her apartment staring at the window. The raindrops mirrored her tears, each one a reminder of the struggle ahead. She had the evidence, the documents that could change everything. But would she have the courage to face Megan? The clock ticked ominously, each second a reminder of the confrontation waiting just outside her door. Rachel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her choices. This was just the beginning. Would she shatter the chains of the past, or forge a new path toward acceptance? Only time would tell as she prepared for the storm of revelations that lay ahead. She paced the hallway of the U.S. Attorney's Community Center, her heart pounding like a drum. This wasn't desperation. It was calculated. "They underestimated you," Ruth whispered, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside Rachel Green. "They always have," Rachel replied, her voice low but firm. The phone buzzed in her pocket, an unknown number lighting up the screen. She pressed play on the voicemail. "Rachel, please, let's meet. Just talk. This doesn't have to go further. We're still family." Megan Hayes' voice trembled, echoing down the sterile hall. Rachel's hand clenched around the phone as she cut off the message. "Not here to talk, Ruth. I'm here to shut them down." A dark, heavy tension lingered in the air. Megan Hayes had whispered something to their mother, words laced with betrayal. "If Rachel blows this open, he'll be the first to go to prison." That thought lingered like a bitter taste. Megan Hayes had deleted Rachel from the family narrative. Yet here she was, adding Megan Hayes' name to a federal inquiry. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing a stark corridor. The buzz of fluorescent lights overhead felt almost intrusive. Standing beside Ruth, Rachel caught a glance of herself in the polished metal doors. She wasn't in a military gear this time. She was armed with the hard truth, the evidence of years of deceit and betrayal. They were led by a stone-faced paralegal into a glass-walled conference room. Matthew Cruz, the assistant U.S. Attorney for Northern Virginia, awaited them. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp and unwavering as Ruth placed the bulging folder of documents on the table. "Ms. Hale," he began, "thank you for coming. We've reviewed the material submitted to the Community Center of the Inspector General. We believe a formal inquiry is warranted." The weight of his words sank in like a stone. The forged deeds, the shady bank transfers, the surveillance footage unearthing Megan Hayes' secrets, they were all laid bare. And, most damning of all, the fraudulent contracts tied to Raven Holdings and Marech, both intricately linked back to Megan Hayes and Brian. Rachel spoke carefully, each word deliberate. She controlled her breathing as if preparing for an interrogation. "They used my discharge credentials to bypass federal locks, and my grandfather's house?" A shudder ran through her like a frigid wind cutting through the summer's warmth. "They used it as a discreet waypoint?" In that moment, as the gravity of her words filled the room, a chill ran down her spine. What lay ahead felt monumental, a turning point veiled in uncertainty. Would exposing these layers of deceit lead to a reckoning, or merely fracture what was left of her family? Only time would reveal if Rachel could truly separate herself from the shadows that had long lingered over this fraught familial landscape. Standing in the dimly lit hallway of her childhood home, Rachel Green let the scent of old wood wash over her, mixing with the faint smell of rain. Familiar laughter echoed from the other room, a sound that once wrapped around her like a warm blanket, now felt like a haunting reminder. The walls, adorned with faded family photos, whispered memories she could never fully grasp. A gust of wind rattled the window, sending a chill down her spine. The unresolved tension with her sibling Megan Hayes loomed like a storm cloud. What went wrong? Why did everything feel so different now? The warmth of acceptance hung just out of reach, leaving Rachel conflicted and desperate for home. Days turned into a blur as she navigated her way through the chaos of family secrets. Megan, with her assertive demeanor and guarded heart, had built walls thicker than any fortress. The past loomed large, grievances buried deep, festering like an untreated wound. Every encounter crackled with unspoken tension, a tug-of-war between protection and resentment. "You don't just waltz back in here, Rachel." Megan's voice sliced through the air, sharp and bitter. But Rachel was brave, determined to carve out a space for herself in a world eager to forget her. As the weeks rolled on, a shocking truth unraveled. In a packed conference room, U.S. Attorney Matthew Cruz laid bare the evidence, a mountain of deceit igniting a firestorm of betrayal. The transfers. The system was rigged, Rachel. Your family could face serious charges. Her heart raced. Could unraveling this conspiracy mend their fractured ties, or would it sever them for good? Anxiety twisted like a vine, twisting tighter with each revelation. Rachel felt the weight of history crashing down, yet she clung to hope. That afternoon, outside Megan Hayes' nonprofit, everything shifted. Watching her sibling receive a federal subpoena, Rachel's heart leapt. What did this mean for their family? For her? In this moment, standing in the shadows, she felt varied emotions collide. Could this unraveling allow Rachel to reclaim her place, or would it only deepen the chasm separating them? The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. She wouldn't back down. Only time would tell if loyalty and love could echo across the rifts of the past, or if the silence would swallow them whole, leaving nothing but echoes in a dimly lit hallway. Rachel Green stepped out of the courthouse, a chill creeping through the air. As she squared her shoulders, the weight of her past loomed over her. The faint echo of her footsteps bounced off the concrete, a reminder of the battles she'd fought alone. Maybe it was the way the black sedan idled across the street, windows tinted, engine running, that made her stomach twist. It was watching her. Did they know her past? Did Megan, her sibling, know the truth? The tension in the air thickened as the questions flooded her mind, threatening to drown her resolve. What did they want after all this time? Inside, the courtroom buzzed with an unsettling energy. The walls were stark white, somehow closing in on her as harsh fluorescent lights cast eerie shadows. She stood tall at the witness table, her right hand raised to take an oath that caught in her throat like sandpaper. Memories flashed through her mind. Her grandfather handing her the keys to their family home. The day she discovered her name was mysteriously erased from every document. The twists of betrayal cut deep, but she couldn't falter. Now, Rachel wasn't just another daughter cast aside. She was a decorated officer, a cybersecurity analyst with a mission. As the prosecutor began, "Rachel, please describe what was done to your property." Her heart raced. She met his gaze with fierce determination. They had forged her signature. They had stolen her legacy. "Your Honor," she continued, the weight of her words hanging in the air, "they altered bank records and funneled money through offshore accounts disguised as non-profit funds." Silence enveloped the room, a cocoon of disbelief. "And they used my military discharge credentials to secure contracts that had no legal claim." As she detailed the betrayal, the photographs and documents laid bare the truth. Waves of anxiety washed over her, yet poise anchored her in this fight. I never consented to any of this. The prosecutor nodded, handing her a photo of the deed with her forged signature. Each piece of evidence, like a whisper of justice, filled the courtroom with a tension that crackled as she revealed the web of deceit spun by those she once trusted, her family. But Megan's shadow loomed large, full of unspoken grievances, and Rachel's heart sank. The reality of their fractured bond weighed heavily. Could confronting the truth repair their relationship or simply exacerbate the wounds? She braced herself, knowing one revelation could shift everything, but what would it cost her? Just then, the door swung open and Megan stepped in, her guarded expression telling Rachel all she needed to know. The tangled ties of family and loyalty hung in the balance, but Rachel wouldn't back down. It was time to reclaim her voice, her identity, and maybe, just maybe, a sense of home. Only time would tell if they could bridge the rift or if silence would snuff out their remaining bond. The air crackled with uncertainty, leaving Rachel poised at the edge of a revelation that could change everything. The courtroom buzzed with tension, a palpable energy that crackled in the air. Rachel Green stood at the center of it all, her heart pounding like a drum. She was no longer just a daughter. She was a decorated officer, a cybersecurity analyst ready to reclaim her life. As the prosecutor began, "Rachel, please describe what was done to your property." She locked eyes with him, determination igniting her spirit. "They forged my signature," she declared. Her voice, Megan Hayes, her sibling, stepped into the courtroom, her guarded expression revealing a world of unspoken grievances. Rachel's heart sank. Could confronting the truth mend their fractured bond, or would it deepen the wounds? Just as the tension reached its peak, the judge called for a recess. Rachel's breath caught in her throat as she noticed Megan's phone light up with a message. "I know what you did." The air thickened with unspoken secrets. Was Megan hiding something darker? A flicker of hope ignited within Rachel. Perhaps the real battle was yet to come. The prosecutor held up a physical copy of the procurement contract, complete with Rachel's old clearance codes and Brian's name on the submission. The courtroom exhaled, the weight of the moment settling in. "Mr. Hale," the prosecutor asked, turning to their father, "can you explain the source of the $320,000 you transferred to Marytech?" Silence enveloped him. He glanced at the floor, then at Megan, and finally at Rachel. But she wasn't just his daughter anymore. She was a federal witness with everything to lose. "In your opinion, Miss Hale," the prosecutor continued, "does this constitute a deliberate conspiracy?" "Yes," Rachel replied, her voice unwavering. "It's not just about a house. It's about power, control, and silencing someone they thought wouldn't come back." The prosecutor nodded, then turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the defendants did not simply defraud a veteran. They undermined public trust, used federal systems for personal gain, and orchestrated a coordinated attempt to erase accountability. These are not family disputes. These are federal crimes." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, pens scribbling furiously on notepads. Rachel stood tall, poised at the edge of a revelation that could change everything. Would she reclaim her voice, her identity, and perhaps a sense of home? Only time would tell if they could bridge the rift or if silence would snuff out their remaining bond. I could hear the clatter of keys and smell the ink from the printed exhibits. The moment the judge called for a recess, every eye in the room turned to me. I stood slowly and took a breath, trying to steady the racing of my heart, willing myself to believe it was adrenaline, not grief. Outside, I pushed through the crowd of photographers and reporters, flashes popping like small fireworks in my peripheral vision. Ruth stayed close, her silence wrapping around us as a comforting shroud. But as I reached the edge of the sidewalk, I spotted her. My mother. She stood under a tree, hands clasped together in a prayer-like pose, a portrait of vulnerability. Her mouth trembled, but no words emerged. Her eyes were red, signaling years of unsaid things. She hadn't sent a single letter, made one call, but now she was here, and I, who had faced war zones and courtrooms alike, felt my own hand tremble. Could this confrontation really mend our fractured bond? As I stepped outside, my heart raced again, not with fear, but with a flicker of hope. For the first time in years, every seat in the courtroom was filled with people not waiting for me to fail, but to finally hear the truth. The federal courthouse in Alexandria felt electric, charged with anticipation. Rows of observers lined the benches, some in suits, some in military gear, some with faces lined by years that mirrored my own. C-SPAN cameras loomed in the corners like silent sentinels. Every lens felt fixed on me as I walked to the front. I wore my military gear, not just for pride, but because it was the only armor I had left. My ribbons were real. My service was real. Today, I would let that truth speak louder than any forged deed or whispered betrayal. "Ms. Hale," the prosecutor began, gesturing for me to proceed. I inhaled deeply, the scent of rain mingling with the tension in the air. It felt like removing rusted chains. "My name is Rachel Green. I served over 20 years in the Department of Defense's Cybersecurity Task Force. I held top-level clearance. I returned home expecting silence. Instead, I was erased." A surprised murmur swept through the audience. My name had been stripped from my family's will, from their home, from our shared story. But just then, a flicker of whispers floated through the crowd. She didn't give up on her. She just abandoned her. A chill ran down my spine. I turned slightly, catching fragments of conversation that cut deeper than any silence. These were supposed allies, whispering judgments thickening the atmosphere. Megan Hayes had told them everything, every grievance, every betrayal. The weight of our shared history hung between us like a fragile thread, stretched and fraying. My heart, racing with hope just a moment ago, now dragged with the familiar tug of resentment. Would I be able to step into the light, or would the shadows pull me back down to where I felt safe? Only time would tell if I could bridge this chasm or if silence would once more snuff out our remaining bond. Rachel Green stood at the edge of a storm, ready to confront the chaos of her past. As the courtroom buzzed with whispers, she sensed the weight of family ties stitched with conflict. For so long, she had been the invisible soldier, fighting for her place in a family that had written her out of their story. She inhaled a mix of anticipation and anxiety, every heartbeat pushing her closer to a reckoning. Suddenly, the smell of burnt coffee wafted through the air, pulling Rachel back to a morning long gone. The memory flickered before her eyes. Megan Hayes, her sibling, standing at the kitchen counter, worry etched on her face. The percolator bubbled like the unspoken emotion swirling between them. Love twisted into resentment, leaving a frigid space filled with regrets. That moment felt like both warmth and chill, a reminder of how their bond had splintered under the weight of betrayal. The sharp taste of coffee lingered in the back of her throat, echoing her resolve as she faced the crowd. They forged signatures, laundered money. They used my identity to access military contracts. Rachel's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. Gasps hit the air like raindrops on pavement. She pressed on, exposing the injustices hidden beneath layers of her siblings' deceit. The audio crackled to life, Megan Hayes' voice slicing through the tension. "She's just an unemployed soldier clinging to medals that don't matter anymore." Silence cloaked the room, the faces of fellow veterans etched with disbelief. "Listen up." Rachel's words overflowed with passion. "We don't wear these uniforms for medals. We wear them because we believe in something larger than ourselves." The heaviness of her words resonated within the courtroom, stirring a crowd that had felt muted for too long. One by one, weary souls began to applaud, an affirming rhythm echoing her own heartbeat. The judge raised his hand, and a hush fell over the room. The prosecutor nodded, acknowledging the weight of the moment. Megan Hayes sat there, a statue draped in confusion and indignation. Her world felt the tremors of consequences long avoided. "This court will proceed to a full criminal trial 6 weeks from today," the judge announced, and Rachel released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. This wasn't the end, but it marked a path toward truth, a journey past denial and doubt. As court recessed, Rachel gathered her notes, heart still racing from the confrontation. Her gaze drifted to the back of the room where a veteran in a faded navy jacket met her eyes, offering a nod of solidarity that spoke volumes. She turned towards the hallway, and there was Megan Hayes, already buried in her phone, scrolling through images of family moments. The hollowness of their pasts collided. Rachel could read the story in Megan Hayes' silence. The photos of laughter and memories glimmered in a world that had turned dark. Each click of Megan Hayes' phone echoed the distance between them, yet Rachel felt something shift inside. Would she be able to weave their fractured history into something whole again, or were they trapped in a cycle of hurt? As the scent of rain-filled air washed over her, Rachel understood this was just the beginning, a chance to rebuild what had been lost, one truth at a time. Megan Hayes quietly pulled out her phone, her fingers dancing over the screen as she deleted every photo of Rachel from the family's social media account. They thought they could erase me, but I had archived everything, even their darkest secrets. Sitting cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, the soft hum of my encrypted laptop filled the silence. The external drive rested beside me like a ticking time bomb, one they'd forgotten I even owned. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of restraint. The file directory loaded, revealing a folder dated 7 years ago, labeled Legacy. Inside were scans of contracts, grainy surveillance stills from years past. They had once been my insurance policy. Now they felt like a loaded gun. Megan Hayes must have thought she had wiped everything clean. She always had a knack for arrogance, but she hadn't counted on my meticulous backups. She hadn't counted on military-grade recovery software, and she sure as hell hadn't counted on me returning with a legal team. I pinged Kayla with a batch of encrypted files. Within seconds, she responded, "Got it. Matching metadata confirms creation from Megan Hayes' home IP. This is gold." Next, I called Ruth. "I'm coming in," I said, "and I'm not alone. I'm bringing ghosts." She didn't ask questions. Ruth never did when my voice sounded like that. At the firm's downtown community center, Ruth waited in the boardroom, sleeves rolled up, eyes sharp. I slid the drive across the table like a chess piece. "Contracts processed through Shell vendors," I said, opening the file. "All routed through Meritech and Raven Holdings. Look, this one's a falsified procurement agreement for drone parts. Same model we used to inspect in Kuwait." Ruth's brows furrowed. "You're telling me they reused defense documents to mask fake orders?" "Not just reused, modified. Then they ran payment cycles through dummy vendors using addresses that match my father's listings from the 90s. They resurrected his old businesses on paper." The tension in the room thickened, a palpable energy crackling in the air. Could this be the key to unraveling the web of deceit? Would the truth finally bring us the acceptance we so desperately sought? As I stared at the screen, the scent of rain wafted through the window, mingling with the memories of laughter and warmth. I could almost hear the echoes of my childhood, a time when acceptance flowed freely. But now, shadows loomed over our past and the path to reconciliation felt steep. Would I be able to weave our fractured history into something whole again? Or were we forever trapped in a cycle of hurt? The stakes were high, and the clock was ticking. This was just the beginning, a chance to rebuild what had been lost, one truth at a time. Rachel Green stood before her childhood home, the air thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth. The faded paint peeled like memories she'd buried deep. She closed her eyes and was 12 again, laughter dancing through the yard, sunlight flickering like a warm breeze. But warmth twisted into a bittersweet ache. each echo familiar yet foreign, like an old song sung by a stranger. She fought against the weight of past grievances, caught between the life she left and the family that felt like a ghost. The longing for acceptance gripped her, a silent plea for reconnection amid the rising tension with her sibling, Megan Hayes. Why was the road to forgiveness so steep? Why did the shadows of the past loom so large? Megan had built walls so high, wrapped in her assertiveness, her guard tight as a drum. But Rachel could see through the cracks. Resentment, protectiveness, the clash of unresolved issues. What drove this wedge between them after all these years? Could Rachel find a way to bridge the chasm, or would unresolved grievances tear them apart forever? As the rain drizzled, the memories surged through Rachel like thunder. She remembered the carefree days, the joy that filled their home. Those echoes were now punctuated by silence. Would confronting those ghosts lead to healing, or would it shine a light on the darker parts of their shared past? The time for reconnection was now or never. Rachel took a deep breath, the rain's fragrance mixing with the weight of longing. With each step toward the main entrance, she felt the past tugging at her like a stubborn shadow. Could she weave their fractured history into something whole once more? The stakes were high. Traditions, legacies, love, everything seemed at risk. Would Rachel succeed in piecing together their family, or would the spiraling chaos turn into an unending cycle of hurt, leaving them more lost than ever? Moments passed, the clock ticking in the background. Uncertainty lingered, heavy and palpable. But Rachel pressed on. She had to try. She owed it to herself. She owed it to Megan. Rachel Green stood in the dimly lit living room of her childhood home, the scent of old wood and fading memories wrapping around her like a familiar blanket. She could almost hear the echoes of laughter from family gatherings, the warmth of her mother's embrace lingering in the air. But a chill ran down her spine as she recalled the last time she felt truly accepted. The weight of her absence pressed heavily on her heart. The walls whispered secrets of the past, igniting a fierce longing to reconnect. Yet the shadows of resentment from her sibling Megan Hayes loomed large, threatening to shatter her fragile hope. Why was the road to forgiveness so steep? Why did the shadows of the past loom so large? Megan had built walls so high, her assertiveness and protectiveness wrapping around her like armor. But Rachel could see through the cracks. Resentment, unresolved issues, and a clash of emotions. What drove this wedge between them after all these years? Could Rachel find a way to bridge the chasm? Or would unresolved grievances tear them apart forever? As the rain drizzled outside, memories surged through Rachel like thunder. She remembered carefree days, joy filling their home. Those echoes were now punctuated by silence. Would confronting those ghosts lead to healing, or would it shine a light on the darker parts of their shared past? The time for reconnection was now or never. Rachel took a deep breath, the rain's fragrance mixing with the weight of longing. With each step toward the main entrance, she felt the past tugging at her like a stubborn shadow. Could she weave their fractured history into something whole once more? The stakes were high. Traditions, legacies, love. Everything seemed at risk. Would Rachel succeed in piecing together their family, or would the spiraling chaos turn into an unending cycle of hurt, leaving them more lost than ever? Moments passed, the clock ticking in the background. Uncertainty lingered, heavy and palpable. But Rachel pressed on. She had to try. She owed it to herself. She owed it to Megan. Understood. Well, prepare accordingly. She hung up, looking me dead in the eyes. That was the federal prosecutor's community center. Based on this new evidence and risk of flight, they're pushing the trial forward. I leaned back in the chair, adrenaline humming through my limbs. It was happening. The timeline was collapsing in our favor. The cliff edge we'd been dancing along had just shifted beneath their feet, and this time, I wasn't the one about to fall. Ruth received word from the prosecutor's community center that the trial might be pushed up due to flight risk. They had their secrets, their manipulation, and each other. But I had something more dangerous: the truth under oath. Brian Hale walked out of the Raven Holdings headquarters for the last time, surrounded by a swarm of flashing cameras. The press release had gone out just minutes before. Due to a pending federal investigation, Brian Hale has been placed on indefinite leave, pending internal review. The company had cut him loose the second the indictment list leaked to media contacts. No one wanted their name tied to federal conspiracy. At the same time, Megan Hayes Hale was across town in a lawyer's community center that smelled like old mahogany and desperation. She was alone. Her posture wasn't sharp anymore. Her voice cracked as she tried to frame her statement. "I was manipulated by my husband and father," she told the assistant district attorney. "I didn't know the details. I was following family orders. It was a gamble and a cheap one. But desperation makes people throw each other under the bus faster than the ink dries on a subpoena." Back at Ruth's community center, I watched footage unfold on the news. Brian's stoic face surrounded by bodyguards, Megan Hayes ducking under her coat at the courthouse steps. But the one that made me pause was the image of my father. He was standing inside what used to be the family home, his hands trembling as he shouted into a phone. As Rachel Green stood on the courthouse steps, a storm of emotions swirled around her. Each drop of rain felt like a reminder of what she had lost: her family, her sense of purpose. The air was thick, charged with anticipation, and behind her, fragments of shattered glass glimmered like distant memories of her past. She opened her phone, and a message from a courier appeared. Instantly, her heart raced, an unsteady beat echoing the weight of her family's secrets. The letter inside the envelope was yellowed but held a truth that could change everything. "Rachel, I've watched from the sidelines far too long," it began. Margaret Lewis, her mother's old friend, had been holding on to a bombshell. Rachel's name was still on the will. "I knew about the house," it continued, "and I also knew she let them change it." Reading those words felt like stepping onto a tightrope, the air thickening with betrayal. Rachel reached the end, the harsh reality crashing over her. Margaret had known, had chosen silence over the truth. What else lay buried under years of secrets? Just then, the courthouse erupted into chaos. "The court finds sufficient cause to freeze the financial assets of Megan Hayes Hale, Brian Hale, and Henry Hale," the judge announced. Each word dripped with the finality of a gavel. Assets vanished. The empire built on deceit crumbled. It was surreal. Their lives, once untouchable, now exposed and vulnerable. Outside, reporters closed in, their voices a murmur of speculation. But Rachel stood firm, her past colliding with her present. The scent of rain mingled with the rustle of leaves, grounding her in this moment. Her journey home wasn't just about reconnecting with family. It was about reclaiming her identity amidst the chaos. Then something shifted. Rachel's phone rang again, a sound cutting through the noise. This was it. The twist in her story was unraveling before her eyes. Would she rise from the ashes or be consumed by them? Each decision felt monumental, echoing in the silence of the storm. The future hung in the balance, her heart racing with unspoken hopes and unresolved fears. It was a number I hadn't seen in years. "Rachel Green," came the voice, shaky, unsure, yet achingly familiar. My mother. She said nothing else, just my name. In that brief silence I could hear everything she didn't say. Regret, fear, maybe even guilt. I held the phone to my ear, choosing silence. Let her sit in it. Let her feel, for the first time, what it was like to be alone on the other end. "Please, Rachel Green, don't ruin us," he begged outside the courtroom. I looked him in the eyes and said, "You did that on your own." It was late afternoon, the light stretching long shadows across the courthouse steps. I had just finished reviewing the final briefing with Ruth when I spotted him. He stood near the marble column, not in a suit, but in his old wool coat. His tie was crooked. His face was pale, smaller than I remembered. I didn't slow my steps until I was nearly past him, but then he spoke, low and hoarse. "Rachel Green." I turned. "Mr. Hale," I replied flatly. His face crumpled at the title. "Don't do that. I'm your father." "You lost the right to that word the day you erased me from everything," I shot back. He stepped closer, desperation in his eyes. "I didn't know it would go this far." "You didn't care," I corrected. "That's what you mean." "I made mistakes," he said, hands open, pleading. "We were trying to protect the family by forging documents, stealing my house, laundering money through a company that used my clearance. That's protection." He looked away, jaw tight. I was scared. "No," I said. "You were proud. You couldn't stand that your daughter came back in military gear instead of a dress, holding medals instead of wedding invitations." His eyes flickered. "That's not fair." "No," I said quietly. "What wasn't fair was you not coming to my retirement ceremony. Remember when I called and invited you?" He stayed silent. "You said, and I quote, 'That's not something to brag about. It's just a job.' 25 years of service, and you reduced it to nothing." He swallowed hard, the weight of my words hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Would he finally understand the depth of his choices? Would he see the pain he had caused? The tension crackled between us, a palpable reminder of the years lost to silence and resentment. As I stood there, the scent of rain mingled with the rustle of leaves, grounding me in this moment. My journey home wasn't just about reconnecting with family. It was about reclaiming my identity amidst the chaos. Would I rise from the ashes of our past, or would I be consumed by them? Each decision felt monumental, echoing in the silence of the storm. The future hung in the balance, my heart racing with unspoken hopes and unresolved fears. The air was thick with unspoken memories. The faint scent of old wood lingered, mingled with something bitter. Rachel Green stood there, fighting back tears. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of that familiar trembling hand reaching out toward her. The shadows of their past began to dissolve, revealing a surprising vulnerability in her father's eyes. The weight of his regrets pressed down like the heavy clouds overhead. Just when Rachel thought she had lost him forever, a buried truth surfaced, sending shivers down her spine. Could everything she believed about family be about to change? Megan Hayes was navigating a storm of her own. Their sibling rivalry was brutal, a back and forth that never seemed to end. Rachel's bitterness crept in every time she thought about it. "You always had time for everyone else," Rachel shot back, her voice sharp and cutting. Megan Hayes had Brian, a whole team of supporters. But for Rachel, nothing, just silence. Their father raised his voice only to lower it again, trembling with a fear he couldn't hide. "You've already humiliated us, Rachel. Don't let it go further," he pleaded, eyes darting around as if the walls themselves were closing in. Rachel burst out laughing, a short, sharp sound that sliced through the tension. "You think I care about humiliation?" she spat, words dripping with disdain. "You erased my name from the will, from the family history, from everything." "Megan Hayes convinced me," he stammered, shame washing over his pale face. I panicked, but the truth hung in the air, heavy as rain. Did he really think that was an excuse? As Rachel looked at his trembling hand, memories flooded back. The man who once held her small hand to walk her to school. But then she felt the emptiness. The empty seat at her commissioning ceremony, the silence after her deployments, the cold reception when she returned home. "I don't hate you," Rachel said quietly, battling the pain inside, "but I can't forgive you for what you've done." Justice, she thought, was on its way, no mercy in sight. His shoulders slumped as he turned away, defeated. As Rachel stepped down the cold courtroom stairs, her mother's presence loomed beside her. "If I had made different choices, maybe you wouldn't hurt this much," she whispered, disappointment woven into every word. Rachel knew the road to healing was a long one, but at least she was walking away with her name, her honor, and justice on her side. The courtroom felt eerily quiet, as if echoing her resolve. Would she reclaim her sense of home amidst the chaos? Only time would tell. The courtroom stood still, a stage set for the final act. Weeks of hearings, motions, and cross-examinations had led to this moment. Rachel Green couldn't shake the heaviness in the air. She sat beside Ruth, their shoulders brushing softly like whispers of support. Across the aisle were Megan Hayes, Brian, and their father, arrayed like figures in a haunting portrait of betrayal. Megan Hayes's jaw was clenched, a fierce resolve masking her fear. Brian's eyes darted around, unsure. Their father looked worn, the arrogance he'd clung to eroded by the weight of the truth. The judge's voice cut through the tension, delivering sentences that hung in the air. Megan Hayes Hale, 6 years in federal custody. Brian Caldwell, 8 years. Edward Hale, 10 years with no parole. Each verdict landed with a palpable thud, silence washing over the room. No cheers or applause erupted. Rachel Green didn't smile. She merely nodded to Ruth, who placed a gentle hand over hers. It wasn't a victory, it was completion. Stepping outside, reporters descended like seagulls. But the first faces to catch her eye belonged to the veterans, men and women with stories etched in their weathered skin. One man, with a prosthetic leg and steady gaze, stepped forward. "Colonel Hale," he introduced himself. "We're not forgotten," Rachel Green told him, feeling the truth surge within her. His nod was reassuring. "Not while people like you are still standing." Flashes from cameras burst around them like fireflies, blinding for a moment. One reporter shouted, "Do you hate them now?" The question hung in the air, heavy and daunting. Rachel Green tilted her head toward the sky. The sun had finally breached the morning fog, warming her face with a gentle embrace. "I don't carry hate," she replied. "I carry clarity." The steps beneath her felt sturdy as she descended, Ruth by her side, unwavering. Isaac waited by the car, while Kayla flashed a thumbs up from across the lot. They were more than allies. They were the family she chose. The house didn't call to her anymore. What she craved wasn't a structure of brick and wood. It was the right to belong to her own story, to weave her narrative through the threads of her past and the hopes of her future. With each breath, Rachel Green felt the weight lift. Could she finally embrace her truth and find the acceptance she longed for? Or would the shadows of their shared history darken her path ahead? Only time would show her the way to a new beginning. Inside the dimly lit Defense Service Library, I stood before the wall of dedication. Dark granite glimmered under the soft lights, each name etched into its surface telling a story of valor. I'd once passed this very wall as a cadet, murmuring promises, dreams I thought belonged to someone else. Today, everything felt different. There it was, Colonel Rachel Green Hale, Cyber Command, OIA 2000-2023. I felt a rush of emotion. Tears threatened, stinging my eyes, but I held them back. In that moment, I wasn't just looking at a name, I was confronting my identity. This was my legacy, my triumph over a past that sought to erase me. Built on lies, it never stood a chance against the clarity of truth. These past months, I had faced down shadows, lost connections, old grudges, and the pain of a sibling relationship that felt fractured beyond repair. Yet, standing there, I realized that freedom from betrayal isn't a loud spectacle. It's a quiet refusal to remain invisible. Justice isn't the clamor of vengeance. Justice is the steady resolve of one who dares to stand tall. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of my journey settle on my shoulders. The years of doubt had led me here, to a moment of grace found in resilience. Life doesn't always hand you a triumphant symphony. Sometimes the fiercest battles echo within, fought silently against the expectations of others. Could I finally carve out a place in this world? Or would ghosts of the past linger, taunting my attempts to belong? Only time would lead me to the answers I sought. The quiet warrior prevailed today. Maybe the loudest victory is won not in battle but in reclaiming the narrative, our own story.